Hello. How are you? Hope everyone was well. I see a few faces in the stream already, which is really awesome. I hope everyone is having a great Friday night. I'm a little bit scrambled here. I had a sort of last minute difficulty, and I wanted to get, use some Reaper examples, like use some DAW examples with bass and guitar. And for some reason, the OBS audio for the desktop audio just stopped working. So we're going to try and get around that somehow. I don't know. I guess we're just going to talk about a lot of stuff. So I apologize that we won't be able to get to that. This is still kind of a work in progress for me. Nick Hill and we spent a bunch of time yesterday fooling around with various streaming parameters and profiles for our duo stream, the stream that we do together on Wednesday nights. And moving forward, we're going to try and stream them to both channels simultaneously. So to this channel and to Nick Hill's channel. And it looks like it works. So next week is going to be the test for that. But I'm going to try and get this desktop audio thing set up for then. Technical stuff. Anyhow, a bunch of friendly faces in the stream. Ann, Nick, J-Dubs, Turbo Plasma Chicken, Nick Hill, how are you, brother? Apoplexia David, Jason, how are you? Yeah, Nick, the technology is great, isn't it? It's and endless amounts of interesting stuff. Have I seen the new Spectre? Yes, we're going to talk about the new Spectre. And it will be kind of, one of these hit points here for today. For today, our topic is not about the bass. And that's a little bit of a play on words. We're going to be talking all about bass, both in the sense of bottom end with baritone guitars, as well as accompaniment for guitars. So actual bass guitars and variants thereof, meaning things that may take the place of bass guitars however you want to do it. There's a bunch of ways we can do it in terms of pairing basses or bass bottom end, so an octave down, if you will, with these baritone guitars. There's a lot of challenges there. So we're going to talk about some of those. And hello, Anthony Nito. How are you, brother? Slipknot Ken, good to see you. And JM Macabre, you actually caught one of these. Yeah, you totally, you are so far. It seems the technology, technology permitting. So fingers crossed that everything, as much as we have going here today, holds together. So just want a little shout out to my pal Yoshi Cooper, who is the photographer of the thumbnail that I used for today's show. A couple of years ago, Yoshi moved to Japan, and I have not seen him for a while, but he was a big to-do in the local music scene, a major photographer, a major force of creativity. And I used one of his photos that he took of a band that I used to play in, I used to play bass in, called Ackroyd. And he took that photo, and I just kind of want to give my respects to him wherever he might be tonight. I think he's living in Hiroshima right now in Japan. Anyhow, Yoshi, I hope you're well. Did you perchance see that email I sent you about bass and low tunings? I did not. I've seen, David, that you have sent me an email. I typically try to batch my emails for Saturday mornings, although lately there's been so much that I've been kind of dipping in whenever I have a chance, but I have not got to that one. But it's very fitting that it's all about bass and low end. So I guess we'll talk about various points of that, but I will respond to your email in full, probably tomorrow morning before noon. Jason, hello everyone. Cool to sort of get to know you. Yeah. So something that is, ripe with Bunn streams as well as Nick Hill streams is get to know each other in the chat. Say hello. Try and lend a hand if somebody's got a question. I kind of plow through a few topics, then go to comments, then go through a few topics, then go to comments. So if there's something that's in the topic that somebody is looking for greater clarity on, and you happen to know, be up to speed with what's going on, you can jump in and kind of if you go at the person's username, you can kind of maybe help them out if they're feeling like they're getting left behind in the topic, or if they have, if they're inspired by another question in the topic. Very much cool. It's a very cool thing to help people out in this stream. So I hope I'm not too hot on the mic. Am I too hot on the mic? I was way too hot on the mic on Nick Hill's last stream, our stream that we do together. So I'm trying to sort all that out. Renato, good day. How are you? Good morning. Good. Hello. How are you? And everyone else. JW, you and Nick should do a subreddit since our communities seem to be chill and helping one another. Yeah, we are. So before we get into the topic, Nick Hill and we are musing on something like that. Right now we're musing, on a Discord forum server. For those of you who do not know Discord, it's very much like a forum or a kind of private Reddit idea. So for those of you who might be interested in exploring this sort of beta test of the Nick Hill Bunn, Discord server, I guess that's what they're called. We're going to be sealing that up a little bit more this coming Wednesday. And this coming Wednesday, we're going to attempt to stream to both channels simultaneously. So no matter if you're on watching on the Bunn side or the Nick Hill side, it looks like so far in testing that the comments go from both sides, both areas, and we can all have a conversation. And we're going to be talking a little bit about putting this Discord thing into action for all of us. It's not to replace the Baritone Obsessed Facebook group, the private Facebook group. It is to complement all other things, because there are a lot of people who are not comfortable with Facebook and the various social medias. So we're just trying to give an opportunity to everyone to interact, really for everyone to meet each other and see what kinds of amazing things come out of that, what kinds of collaborations and development and creativity and all the rest of it. Because in the Baritone Obsessed Facebook group, an incredible amount of creativity happens there, and collaborations, and a lot of friendships made. So for those of you who are not interested in the Facebook or whatever, we're going to try and solve that. But today's topic is, bass and baritone guitars. Bass, like, what's the scoop on tuning super low? Why is it so bassy? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are people doing it in order to have more bass? Or some people are like, I have way too much bass. What do I do? So there's all kinds of things going on there. I'm going to get my I have an outline that I'm going to follow a little bit. Where is my outline? Did I close it? Oh no. Okay. Here it is. Bam. So yeah, Nick Hill is in the stream. Or in the chat. So if you'd like to kind of muse a little bit more on this Discord thing, you can have a inner chat conversation with him. He'd be very happy to talk to you about that. And like I say, if there's things where we're going too fast through a topic or something like that, ask it in the chat, like ask your questions in the chat or bring up your concerns in the chat, and hopefully other users can kind of jump in and get everybody going, get everybody up to speed. And if I'm done, like once I'm done each topic, we'll get to it as well, if it's not already fully solved. So the first sort of point on this bass, it's not about the bass. In this case, it's not about the bass in terms of baritone guitars. You know, the question often is, isn't baritone all about more bass, or my baritone is too bassy? We seem to get a lot of this kind of stuff, not only at the beginning of a person's baritone journey. Sometimes people put in a whole bunch of time and they're just like, you know what, I want to give up on this because these are the issues. It's like, I was hoping to get more bass out of it, or I was hoping to get more bass, like to replace the bass and do a two-piece thing with a drummer, or I can't cut bass, or I can't control the bass enough. So generally speaking, on the first part of the topic, isn't it about more bass? I guess this is for both points. Generally with really bassy guitar, if you have a really bassy guitar, it doesn't matter the tuning. It just so happens that with super low tunings, bass is more of a challenge, more of a problem. It's also a beautiful thing to some extent, but generally it's problematic in a mix, meaning once you start piling instruments on, a guitar on each side and an actual bass guitar in the center, suddenly there's just this wall of low end and it's all interacting in a muddy way. And you're like, what do I do? And often, especially with lower tunings like A or G or lower, a high pass filter is used. And although I can't get Reaper working, like to play, I can show you what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't know, let's go to just like a blank thing here. And we're going to go scene 2. I hope this is working. I'm going to just check. You're going to see the camera, but okay, great. But because things are not working, I'm just like, oh, I need to check that it's working. So you don't need to see the dock, but we'll just put so I'm using the Reaper DAW just to kind of bring you up to speed with what's going on. If you're not familiar with production, for those of you familiar with production, excuse just this quick little introduction. This is Reaper. I just have one channel up. This section of the channel is the effects inserts. And so we're going to open that up and we're going to put an EQ on there. And EQ, bam, bam. And we'll just get the re-EQ. This is the stock Reaper EQ. So very often with low tuning, specifically with guitars, like I say, I apologize. We can't listen to this because the audio part is just not working. But often we will cut a lot of bass. And in the DAW, and if you're using a modeler, this kind of a tool is also available in modelers. If you're using a traditional amplifier, there's other things that other techniques we can go about to, try and tame the bottom end. But we're going to just kind of focus on the DAW. And like I say, with modelers, I have the HX Stomp, and the HX Stomp has this kind of a tool in it, which is a low cut EQ, a parametric EQ, a low cut EQ. It has a whole bunch of EQs in it. But so this is typically called a high pass filter because it allows the highs to pass. And what it does is it filters out all the bottom. And it's right here, bam, and it just cuts off the bottom end here. And typically for me, and I tune to G with a bunch of my material. Also, my Wetlands stuff is tuned down to low E, E1 standard. And I use a high pass filter always on all of my low tune stuff. On my regular E stand, like just regular rock and roll type of stuff. Like I don't really do much of that these days, but if I were to do it, I usually don't cut a bunch of bottom. Like if it's just regular E rock and roll guitar, I never seem to need to do this. But with the low tune stuff, I do this. I typically always cut around 100 hertz. And you know, you can finesse that, put it where you think feels good. But this is a great tool to just reach for if you're like, my bass guitar or my guitar is way too bassy, way too much bottom end, way too much mud. And what's interesting is big fat chugs that sound like they have a bunch of low end. Usually most of the bass is cut in those big low tuned chugs, and cut in this kind of way. You can be more surgical with it. You know, you could do like a notch, bam, or not a notch. Let's go, just a band, bam. You could just do a band kind of thing and you can narrow the Q, bam. Like if you want to be more surgical about your EQing, I don't see any benefit to doing that way when it comes to extended bottom end. I typically prefer the high pass filter, but there's no rules. You should do it the way that you like to do it. Experiment, have fun, be curious, be fearless, all that kind of stuff. But do we get back to our thing? Yeah, we do. Wow, this is wild. Something's actually working on this computer. I'm getting a new computer. I'm waiting for it. It's the delivery of it has sped up, but it's still not here. Anyhow, so generally, a lot of bass on a guitar is, you know, problematic in a mix, whether it be a recorded mix or even a live situation. You want to control the bottom end more than anything. You also want to control the extreme high end. Like extreme treble is also a problem, but that's not going to be a part of today's topic. So yeah, number one, a lot of bass in a mix, especially a lot of bass in guitars, usually not a positive. I can't think of a situation where it is a positive. However, if you're doing a two-piece kind of thing, and it's like one guitar and a drummer, and you're like, I want to do this baritone guitar because I want to compensate for both the guitar and the lack of the bass. I want to kind of have this middle instrument. Well, even if you're doing a baritone guitar, so, you know, a better way to do it, if you can afford it, there's two ways to go about this, but a way to go about it is maybe to split the guitar signal and go an octave down to a bass amp. So a ABY split, and I have one. No, my roommate is using it right now. Anyway, for those of you who don't know what an ABY split is, if you Google ABY split, it'll show you. It just splits your signal into two signals. If you're using a modeler, once again, with the Helix, my Helix Stomp doesn't facilitate two paths, but every Helix bigger than the Stomp has a stereo path. So you naturally have a split in a lot of modelers. So the bigger Helixes, everything bigger than the Stomp has it. The Axifexes, is that a word? Yeah, anyway, Axifex has multiple paths, so you can have a split in that. I think this day and age, if you're going to do a two-piece thing and you're going to do like a split, a guitar split, where you're going to have a bass signal, a clean guitar signal that goes into an octaver pitch down or a pitch shifter, something that preserves the harmonic series like a drop pedal does. Guitar into something like that and into a bass processed kind of sound, a bass amp type of thing on the bass side. And then the guitar side is preserved. So I've known a lot of people who've tried to go that road without the split, just a single amp. They're like, I got a baritone guitar. It's going to have so much bottom end. But the bottom end, if you just try to get it all out of one amp, and the guitar sound itself has all this bottom in it, it often doesn't end well. It's often not a nice sound. It doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's worth trying. If you can get it to work, amazing. Tyler Adams, thank you for the sticker. Very appreciated. I hope you're well. I'm going to get to some comments here very shortly. I'm almost done this part of the topic. We do comments in between each topic. So yeah, a situation where you might want to actually have guitar and like have it be producing bass specifically might be the two-piece scenario. And then there's the bass 6 and bass projects. I have a project like that. It's called Wetlands, and the two instruments are in the same octave. But the bass 6, I don't have one out because I'm so prepared. But the bass 6, I use the Squier Jazzmaster Baritone. It's a 30-inch scale guitar. I have it tuned to E1 standard. And I also use the Ibanez SRC6, which is also 30 inches in scale, and it's tuned to E1 standard. So you can use those guitars tuned to a bass tuning, but the magic of them is having this guitar kind of sound, which means cutting a lot of the bottom end, like we've talked about, either through a high pass filter or through other means. There are certain things you can do to process your tone without heavily processing it. And when I say process your tone, I just mean using effects or using a variety of things in the path of your tone to control your tone before, it's amplified and coming out of speakers. So there are a bunch of sort of EQ things or amp choices or overdrive choices that can help tighten the bottom end. We can get more into those specific topics in a future date. But is a baritone guitar all about more bass? Or my baritone guitar is way too bassy. Even with these extreme tunings, extreme low tunings with a bass 6, it's down in E1. Some people are pushing it past that down to like C. And yeah, too much bottom end, not a very good tone. And if you experiment with it, you'll notice. However, if you're wanting to use, say, a bass 6 more in a bass roll, then yes, plenty of bottom end. Like just go straight into a bass amp and process it as a bass and go have at it, go all the way in. But I think the trick to it with baritone guitars and their accompanying instruments is like, what is the role of this instrument? If it's a baritone guitar, well, I want it to still sound like a guitar. So a guitar is a mid-range focused instrument, typically and its strongest signature, and where it performs the best is between about 100 hertz and about 5 kilohertz. And everything outside of that is, spice or candy or whatever. It may or may not be useful. But a typical guitar sound where it's going to be rich and sound very much like a guitar in terms of the spectrometer or whatever you want to call it, the frequency response curve is between about 100 hertz and 5 kilohertz. And like I say, there is more to those signals, but it's up to you how you want to use the stuff in the high frequency and the stuff in the low frequency. And a lot of times the low frequency stuff, it's like, get it out of here. So that's the first point. Isn't baritone all about more bass, or my baritone is too bassy? I hope that was kind of just like led to a frame of mind. Some of you already have this frame of mind, and I apologize, kind of starting out with this maybe old topic for some of you, but we're going to get into more stuff here. We're going to get into a little bit of the comments here. I'm going to drink a little bit of water. I'm already almost out of water. Or just use a backtrack for the bass. David. Yeah. So that is going to be part of it. So we're going to get at our last topic here is my bass player. What do they have to do to match my baritone? Or what can I do to match my baritone? I don't have a ding wall, or I don't have this, that, the other thing. There's a lot of ways you can do the bass accompaniment thing. If you're producing by yourself, you have the most options. If you're just sitting behind a computer and producing tracks, you have the most options. And all of those options are worth checking out. We're going to get into them. We're not going to get there quite yet. Yeah, so using backing tracks, if that's one of your ways, awesome. Circle of Tone, I'm having a problem with 6-stringed B tuning. Any affordable suggestion guitar-wise and string set? Well, B, very easy to, if it's just regular B2, like B2 standard or even drop B2. There are a lot of guitars that can accommodate it. A 25.5 inch scale guitar, guitar can do it. However, you'll get better results if you use something like a 26.5 or 27 inch scale guitar. It'll just be richer. You can use lighter strings. The whole trick with baritone is if you want it to have a rich guitar sound, trying to get the scale long enough so you can get the strings light enough to get that rich mid-range, that really like magical, pillowy, big mid-range that you get in a regular E standard guitar. So more scale is always better. If you want to do B and you want to have the thinnest, lightest strings possible, you could go all the way up to a 30-inch scale baritone and use incredibly light strings and have a beautifully like rich guitar sound. But maybe you like a little bit of weight on the strings and for chugging or whatever. So maybe you want to go shorter. Some of those things, Circle of Tone, are the things to consider before you start going out there and looking at guitars. It's like, okay, what kind of sound do I want to achieve first? A lighter, rich string sound, or a darker, deader, big string sound? Because big strings tend to kill the tone. But that is a tone that some people like. So if that's knowing what you like is important to consider first, and then we can maybe address your thing a little bit more specifically. Other guys, you guys are all getting to it. Not apologies. We're all talking about the same thing. Dave B, it's about string thickness and tension versus scale. Yeah, trying to get that Daryl, my brother. Super effective. Thank you, brother Daryl. Is that Jason Oshowski with a sticker as well? Thank you, Jason. Oh my God, you guys are incredible human beings. Thank you. What was I getting at? Light as we put. Yeah. So, Dave B brings up kind of the magic equation, string thickness and tension, versus scale. So the scale and the thickness of the string, or the weight of the string, are going to contribute to tension, either more or less. Shorter scale, less tension. Lighter gauge, less tension. However, if the scale is too short for the tuning you want to go to, and you have to use a heavier string, this tone will get more and more dead as the gauge goes up. So I think in the beginning, like figuring out what do I like about a guitar tone? If you like a dead sludgy tone and you're going to play like Sleep and that kind of stuff, maybe it doesn't matter. You can use a pretty short scale and use really big strings. The tuning might be an issue. Another thing to consider is the tuning. Tuning has always been my own personal you know, my own personal challenge, like the biggest part of my own personal challenge. So in addition to everything else. So yeah, those are all things to consider. I hope that, as well as what everyone else is sharing here in the path or in the chat, is useful information for everyone. Standard E and drop the low string to be with a pretty light gate. Only problem is there's virtually no low end. Yeah. So MJ Macabre is talking about, you know, with really, really light strings, even if it works, it's, you know, there, you might lose some bottom end. So kind of, I always like to think about it like a bass guitar. So why is a bass guitar, you know, so much different than a guitar? A 34-inch scale bass has twice the size of a string and is quite a bit longer than a regular guitar, 25.5-inch scale guitar. Well, everything kind of scales up proportionately as you go down in pitch. And the thing is with bass guitars is when you tune those down, is they fall apart a lot faster than guitars do. Guitars, you have a little bit more room to tune down, or in terms of tuning, than you do with basses. Basses, it's hard to tune them up. They get really tight really fast, and tuning them down, they fall apart really fast. So happy birthday to me. Yes. Thank you, Daryl. Yeah, it was my birthday yesterday. I am 49 years old officially now. It's wild. Last year of my 40s. I hope to make it a good one. But yes, strings, scale length, tuning, the trifecta of the challenge. Yurgal brings up an interesting thing. I'm in the midst of making a video about this topic right now. I'm not going to go into it because there's so much to talk about, but he has an SRC6. I also have one. It's a 30-inch scale guitar, and he's got it tuned to B, like upper B, or I guess lower B, like a fourth lower of a regular guitar, with really light strings. He's got 10s on it tuned to B, and I've been experimenting with this, and it's a fantastic thing. It's such a rich, bright sound, but yes, like the chugging is different, but it's good. It's different, but it's pretty awesome. So if you get a chance to use a really long scale baritone for not terribly light or not terribly low tunings, it's an interesting experiment, and there's a lot of takeaway there, especially like, oh, okay, you know, how the strings react and what the tone is and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's informative in terms of going forward with your other setups, no matter what your target tuning and all that stuff is. So you guys are doing a great job in the comments here with helping each other out. So I'm going to move along to some more of the topic here. Birthday wishes. Thank you very much, everyone. Cosman, Tenacious Street, Alexis. Yeah, thanks. Connor. Yeah, really, Connor. It's like I'm a rather older fellow. It's pretty wild. Hey, Bacon. Bacon Wizard. Oh, hey, Owen. Circle of Tone. Hey, okay, you guys are making friends. I love it. Dude. Daryl, yeah, we're going to, as soon as like COVID permits travel, I'm heading on up to the Great White North, and we're going to drink beers and have, you know, party horns and play bluegrass music in your living room, and it's going to be amazing. So next part of the topic, do I need a bass amp for baritone guitar? You know, I hear this a lot. I'm sure a lot of you in the viewership. Oh, Anthony, thank you. 49 going on 39. Yes, I am. I would like to think 49 going on 29. That's where my heart's at, but you know, the lines under my eyes say otherwise. But we're going to get back to the topic here. Do I need a bass amp for baritone guitar? So I hear this a lot. I'm sure others of you who are in this topic have probably come across this quite a bit as well. And the answer is, if you play your baritone guitar more as a bass type of role, then yeah, use a bass amp. If you like the sound of a bass amp, yeah, use a bass amp. But do you need a bass amp to, if you get into a baritone guitar? Generally, no. Generally, if you're getting into baritone guitar because you want this range of dark notes, you want more access to more dark notes. That was my interest. B, I ran out of notes. I ran out of those low notes. I wanted to grab more of them. A, same thing. I'm like, I want more of those notes. And so I went down to G and G. I stopped at G for a reason. And then I went down to E with another project, Wetlands, in a completely different way for a completely different reason. But yeah, a lot of times people just want to be able to grab these darker notes and have access to more of them. So do you need a bass amp for that? No, because you probably want a guitar type tone. So, your standard T75 speakers or G75 speakers or, V30s and, a typical tube amp type of scenario, dual rectifier, 5150, diesel Herbert, whatever. I don't know, like whatever you feel like playing. I use mostly modelers these days, but I do have a 5150 and a Legacy and a couple tube amps here. I don't really use them that much, but thank you, Apoplexia. Thank you, David. That was very kind. I shouldn't have said it was my birthday. But do you need a bass amp? No. You probably don't if that's your goal. But if you want to sound like a bass, if you want that bass sound, use a bass amp. It's really more of a aesthetics thing than it is a technical thing. Do you need it? No, you technically do not need it. It's probably not what you want at all if you just want to be able to grab all these dark notes. And like we were saying in the first topic, a whole lot of bass, like a sub bass or extended bass bottom end in a guitar tone, typically doesn't work out very well. Yeah, it was Nikhil's birthday just shortly before mine, which is wild. We are men. We're so mature. So do I need a bass amp for baritone guitar? And if you are going in a split, so this is the other side of that. Do I need a bass amp? If you're going to do the split your signal, I'm in a two-piece band and I play guitar, but I also want to pull up the bass roll. So I want to probably, instead of trying to get all of the tone out of one tone, out of just the guitar tone, it is 9 times out of 10 going to be more satisfying, not only to you, but to your audience and to the overall experience of the thing. If you split the guitar signal to a regular guitar kind of thing where it's very controlled and it's in the guitar realm, and then split it off to an octave down that goes into a bass amp. And the octave down option, there's some really good ones now. I've done a video on the drop, and there's many others. There's the Pitchfork by Electro Harmonics. There's sometimes you could just use like a regular sub. We're going to get a little bit more into that kind of stuff in the final topic. But yeah, if you're going to split the tone, if you're going to do a two-piece thing and you're like, I'm going to try and fill multiple roles as the guitar player by picking up some of that bottom end, a split is the way to go, where you would need a bass amp or a modeler with both options. And even if you're using the modeler and you're not playing giant venues, you're probably going to need a power amp and some bass speakers. I'm pointing at things you can't see. I have like a whole bunch of amps over there. I guess you could probably see them if I just kind of spin the camera. I don't know. My room's a kind of a mess right now, but yeah, I'm sure everybody's seen my amps in the regular videos. But There are amps over there. When I'm pointing over there, that's what I'm pointing at. I apologize. Like, it's just a natural thing. Circle of tone. Thank you. Happy everything all the time. Yes, I like your attitude. That's my attitude. Amazing. But that's it for the, do I need a bass amp for baritone? I hope that, I don't want to get too into that one, but I hope that was enough to kind of get your own gears started on it. It's like, what kind of amps do I need to reproduce this thing that I'm doing? 9 times out of 10, the answer that you're going to arrive at is more for the aesthetics of your project, like what you want it to sound like artistically, than it is technically. Because usually the guitar is going to do the guitar roll and the bass is going to do the bass roll. And even if you're using a guitar to do the bass roll, it is suddenly dedicated to a bass roll. Or if you're doing the split, you're kind of bouncing back and forth. So that's all there is to say really about using a bass amp and a baritone guitar. Tenacious Street. Am I saying it right? Tenacious Street. But I'm going to grab a few comments here. Thank you very much, sir. I very much appreciate it. Tenacious? I don't know. I'm not very good with language. You guys are very generous. Thank you so much. Jason Shosky, you guys I love this. You guys are helping each other out, getting into it. Zachary, how can I buy your tune? How low can you tune a bass guitar before it's garbage? So a typical 34-inch scale bass. Obviously, you can up the gauge of the strings quite significantly. You start to run into problems with the tuning and the tone, the string. If you don't increase the scale, the tone of the instrument dies really fast. And I tried everything before I got into a specialized bass. I have do I have it here? Yeah, I prepared it because I was going to do some examples, but I can't get the audio part to work. So this here, I don't know how well you can see that in the monitor or whatever, but this here is a Dingwall combustion bass. And previous to this, I had an Ibanez BTB 705DX, which was a 35-inch scale bass. And previous to that, I was using a Tobias, an original Michael Tobias growler, 34-inch scale bass. And I was trying to do that in like A, and then I was like, I got to go down to G, and it really wasn't working. And I put a 175 on that 34-inch scale bass. So a 175 on the low string, like 0.175 gauge. And it just didn't do anything. The tone was super dead. There was none of that high frequency kind of like, gargle. Like I really like that gargly tone. And the bass wouldn't perform, and a lot of the notes just didn't really speak out. So I went to a 35-inch scale bass, and that didn't really work out either. It was okay. Excuse me. It was much better in A tuning. I always play in standard. There is a difference between drop tunings and standard tunings in terms of how they perform. And you'll know this the more that you experiment. But it's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. Steel Sound. It's going so fast here. Steel City Sound, how are you? I didn't want to miss your comment. Hello. I hope you are well. I'm just cramming through these topics here. Or I'm not cramming, I'm cramming on this question here. But yeah, bass tends to fall apart like about 2 steps down on whatever scale. And then you got to kind of extend the scale. If you want good performance, if you want like really rich tone and you want that gargle, like if you want the bass to have some personality other than just being like a note, nothing wrong with that. Like if that's the kind of tone you're going for, it'll be easier to kind of navigate. But yeah, I found even the 35-inch scale bass, it was great for A with the super giant strings, and it just was very poor for G. And I got the Dingwall, and my whole life changed. Is the Dingwall ideal? It is not. I need to be very upfront about that. I would like still a little bit more scale. I would like a 38-inch scale bass to do G, because I could get the string gauge down a little bit. The string gauge is still too high for me in terms of the tone that I like. And also on basses with this super low tuning, you might find that stainless steel strings are going to perform better than typical nickel strings and all that kind of stuff. So little tip there. But I hope that answers your question. I went so into it that I can't even remember where it came in here. But I'm going to kind of grab one more little question. So this is Renato. How are you, Renato? Hope all is well. Little question. Does anybody have any experience with the Quart Sunset Baritone? Except for the specs, I couldn't find much about it, and any info would be helpful. Hope I'm not too much off topic. Not off topic. The Quart Sunset is their semi-hollow sort of classic bass. I'm pretty sure it's a 34-inch scale bass. I don't know much like specifically about it. If you're going to get that bass to go super low, I think you're going to wrestle with it, and it might not be the best investment. I don't know how low you want to go. But yeah, Nick Hill actually responded in the comments here. He has a Quart 5-string bass. Quart is a magnificent company as far as quality of instruments go. Very much a sleeper company. They make a lot of the guitars for Ibanez. So the Ibanez, Indonesian Ibanezes, a lot of those are made by Quart. The RGIBs are made by Quart. So both my RGIB 6 baritone Ibanez and my RGIB 21 are both made by Quart. You can follow the serial numbers and it'll tell you what factory it was made in, and both of those guitars that I own were made in the Quart factory. So Quart is a reputable company that makes very, very good quality instruments. The key is it going to facilitate the performance that you desire? So what is the tuning that you want to go to, and what kind of music do you want to use it for? Those two things are very important. And what kind of tone are you hoping to achieve in all of that? So I hope that's some good food for thought. I'm going to move on to the next little topic here. 9:48. I kind of want to get into some general conversation because that's always the funnest part. But isn't this next topic isn't the bass guitar going to be below the threshold of human hearing? And the other part of that is, are the speakers going to be able to reproduce it? And this is always an interesting one. This is a thinking that the absolute needs to be addressed. And what I mean by that is the absolute fundamental frequency is very important to some people. And the truth is, on a lot of records, on a lot of the stuff that you hear, especially with lower tuned stuff, the fundamental frequency isn't present at all. It is cut out, and I do this as well. I can share the screen here. Let's go to that Reaper session again. We're going to go to a different one. And let's go to scene 3 or scene 2. Oh, 2. And we'll go to this one here. I can't play it. Like if I play it, you won't hear it. But so this stuff here is with the Dingwall. This is stuff I recorded and produced. The track is called Pneumatic, and the bass clean side. Let's look at the EQ. There's a lot of processing on my bass signal here. I'll kind of expand that a bit. So I have a dirty side, a clean side, and a bass group. Like both of these channels feed into the group. I wish I was trying to get it so I could play it and we could listen to this stuff, but I don't know, something's broken somewhere. Anyway, but on the clean side, if I'm tuned down to G, but my low cut, my high pass filter is set to 67 hertz. So the the fundamental frequency of G, I believe, is 28 hertz, somewhere around there. I could be a little bit off, but it's somewhere around there. This is G0. So G0, I think, is 28 hertz. And that's nowhere in there at all. It's completely cut out. And my productions, and this is the case with most people who produce these kinds of music, this low tune stuff, Meshuggah included, is most people cut out the sub bass. And that also means cutting out the fundamental sub frequency, because there is enough information in the partials, in the harmonic content, the second order harmonics, the third order harmonics, all that stuff. And the tone kind of rebuilds itself in our ears. It's possible that our ears fill in the information, but the bass stuff always sounds super low. If you go to my website, I have all of my music up there and you can hear examples. I apologize again that I can't play samples today. It's really frustrating. But yeah, you don't need the fundamental frequency to to have powerful bass. And so this whole thing of, what kind of speakers do you need to reproduce these bass guitar frequencies? Nothing too special. An 810, two 810s is even better because it looks cool. It sounds good too. I want to go back to my screen here. Bam. And, oh, bam. Bam. Is it working? I don't know. I don't know everything's so broken. Yeah, I'm here. And where is my notes? I need those. Bam. So isn't the bass going to be below the threshold of human hearing? No. In terms of the fundamental frequency? No, because we're not even going to use it. And the speakers don't need to be anything special because the fundamental is going to be cut out. And the fundamental is also being cut out in the guitar. What we were talking about earlier with the high pass filter on the guitar, to get the guitar into a tonal space that represents sort of more of a traditional guitar frequency response. We don't need the fundamental at all. And there's so much evidence that is the case. I highly recommend experimenting with it just to get your ears acclimatized to it and, start thinking about that in terms of your own productions and playing live and all that stuff, because it makes a really big difference in terms of how your music presents and holds together and mixes and all that kind of stuff. So getting acquainted with all of that, like what frequencies you can just throw out and be like, I don't need those. Those frequencies are a problem to me, and they are not my friend. And I'm speaking about all of this in kind of general terms. There may be something that somebody is doing where these things are important. I can't cover every single scenario or use case, but knowing, thinking about things from a variety of different perspectives can be very helpful in terms of achieving the kinds of results that you're looking for. So, Nick Hell, thank you. What if you put Restream on your master bus and then as a filter on your OBS? Yeah, I'm not going to fool with any of that right now. It's working enough that it's, not fully melting. I did all these restarts and I was trying to fix everything right before the stream. It was working earlier today. And then I don't know, I did something and it stopped working. So whatever. It's supposed to be a Macintosh. It's supposed to be it's supposed to always work. Anyhow, that's it for that topic. We got one final topic, but we're gonna get into a little bit more of the comments here, because it's fun. You guys are having awesome conversations. And then make a nice demo. Yeah. So David says, then what about just using the same octave as the guitar, but boosting the sub or using an octaver? Oh, we're going to actually get into that topic, David. Subsonic bass, there's a clash bass. So Awer, I think it's Awer. Apologies if I'm butchering your name, dude. Like, I'm so bad at language. But Awer, I'm going to say Awer. He brings up a good point here about subsonic bass. There's a clash with the bass drums already. So imagine that kick drum spamming at the bass fundamental frequency. So this is something to be very mindful of. Is, you know, what other low frequency things are going on in the mix that need, it's a lot of times it's just low mids. You know, like the bass drum. Some people like to pour on some like 50 hertz to the kick drum. I don't know. I'm pretty careful with like sub frequencies. I find the magic of the kick drum is somewhere between 80, like the boom of the kick drum is somewhere between 80 and 100 hertz. The magic of the bass guitar is somewhere between 65 and 80 hertz in terms of the supreme low end. A good thing to do is to, you know, put an EQ on and just kind of like highlight the bands. We'll go back to that. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And let's go 3. Oh, damn it. I got to do it a different way here. Bam, bam, bam. So once again, we can't hear it, but one way you can get to know what all the bands sound like is, let's say it's on a bass guitar or a bass drum or whatever, just boost a single frequency a lot, and narrow like that, you know, not wide, really narrow, and let the material play and just sweep that frequency through the, you know, you probably keep it flat. Let's do that. Great. And just sweep that frequency through the graph. And you can do it the opposite way too, just to get to hear what it sounds like with and without that frequency present, or that frequency sort of highlighted or removed. And it can be very insightful in terms of like, oh, okay, I can hear suddenly the frequency that is really kind of making this bass guitar or this tom or whatever, really kind of like dance. This is a common technique in terms of using EQs. The better you get at it, the less you have to boost it up seriously like that. A lot of times you kind of already know, and you just kind of go to the area, boost it a little bit, you dance it around, you're like, oh, right there. Great. But yeah, if you do that, you get to know where things reside with each other. And that whole thing of like the kick drum and the bass guitar, they share some space. So what are the spaces that they share, and try and get them out of each other's way a little bit. It doesn't have to be extreme. Sometimes you only have to dip something just a little tiny bit to give it a little bit of space for the other thing to be highlighted, or maybe the vice versa. So it's a really good point. Oh yeah, I keep I keep going back to all my stuff here. I don't know. Did that work? Sidechain. Trying to vibe on the track comes into play. Experimentation. So Nick Hill and I, we talk about this sort of thing a lot. Yeah, just like, you know, satisfy the curiosity of your ears. Try everything. Try everything, even if people poo-poo it. Even if it's trendy to poo-poo an idea. Just try it out. See, get your own opinion, your own ears on it, and be like, yeah, this is what I want to. This is actually what I want it to sound like. Sometimes you'll discover it's like something that is a trendy treatment in one kind of music. You're like, actually, the kind of music that I'm making, this treatment is perfect. I want to do this muddy, gross, disgusting music. It's whatever you want to do. Apoplexia says those frequencies are about right even for the ultra clinical drum and bass producers where everything in the track is super loud but clear and defined. Yeah, I find, so David, Apoplexia brings up a good point. Something I have found is that most music kind of adheres to a spectral system. You have your upper mid-range frequencies like guitars and certain kinds of keyboards and whatnot. Then you have your sort of low frequency information like bass guitars or synths and these sorts of things. And then you have your percussion. Your percussion is spread out across that frequency bandwidth to mimic like stomping your feet and clapping with your hands, kick drum and a snare. And most music on earth tends to conform to some extent to some basic principles of recording and audio and broadcast of audio. So broadcast could be a live show, could be just a band on a stage, like broadcast or a public performance, whatever. These ideas apply to everything. And the more that you get, the more that you get acquainted with them and comfortable with them and being curious about them, that's where you become the most effective with all this stuff. You're like, oh, I want to know how it works, and I want to try, everything, even if it's not cool to try. You try it, and then you know what it sounds like, and you're like, okay, well, that doesn't work for me. But then, oh, this does work for me. Totally. So yeah, good point, David, Apoplexia. Couple more comments. Connor Turboplaza. Oh, you guys are the best. Riff Biscuit. Should I use a boost pedal with my super low tune guitars? My answer is yes. Not everyone is going to agree, but I think a lot of people are going to agree. So Riff Biscuit is asking, is a boost pedal something that is good? And not all boost pedals are created equally, but things that borrow from the Tube Screamer circuit concept, there are others, but that's a popular one. And the reason it's popular is because it pre-filters out some bottom end. It gets rid of some low frequency stuff just by the nature of the pedal being on, so that the pedal can do a better job of what it's supposed to do. It's part of its boost circuit. And there's something also about when you use a boost pedal, a lot of boost pedals, when you use the boost pedal to drive the signal going into the tubes versus turning the preamp up of the tubes, like adding gain into the circuit with the preamp gain versus pushing gain in to the input. That seems to be a bit tighter, a bit clearer than the actual more preamp gain. So typically what a lot of people will do is they will use a low preamp gain and use a boost pedal to push into that preamp stage of the tube amp or any amp. And two things going on. There's that thing with pushing those tubes in that fashion that has a clearer nature about it. I'm actually doing a video. I've been working on a video about boost pedals, and I kind of wish I didn't get into it because it's a very in-depth video that's taking months. Anyway, but yeah, by driving the tubes that way, there's a different, it's a different character. It's tighter. It's more articulate. In addition to, a lot of these boost pedals are voiced in a way that they naturally clean up some of that extended bottom end, just get it out of there completely. And you'll find that especially in a lot of the metal oriented modern boosts. Like I have these are borrowed. My pal Anthony lent these to me. Ugh, I'll grab them. I think, oh, the other one's on the board right now. So, but I got a bunch of boost pedals here. So I have the Electro Harmonix East River Drive, and it's really a modded tube screamer tone. And it does exactly what you would expect. A-beat it against a bunch of actual tube screamers, and it just sounds like a slightly modded tube screamer. And then there's the saw, and it's very tube screamer-ish as well. And then there is the 33, and the 33, it's probably hard to see because, I don't know, can you see that? This is a Fortin pedal, and this is made for Meshuggah, and it's a very extreme circuit in terms of tightening up the bottom and focusing the upper mids and pushing into the amp with more gain. And it seems like with that pedal, if like for, you know, really focused, articulate, low-tuned metal, that seems to be the cat's meow. Like it just, anything you put it on instantly sounds clear and better and awesome. So overdrive, yes, I highly recommend using an overdrive. However, it's dependent on what you're trying to do artistically. So keep that in mind. But I highly suggest, if you have an opportunity to try them and just get your own ears for them, try them out. Sometimes you can rent pedals depending on where you live. If you live near in a bigger city with bigger stores, a lot of those stores are going to have rental departments. I'm very lucky. There are rental departments all around me for music gear. So when I want to try stuff like this, a lot of times I can just go rent it. But I realize this is not the case for a lot of people. Another thing you can do sometimes, with some stores have such amazing return policies that you can just buy the thing. It's like renting a thing. Buy a pedal, and it's not a lot of money, but you do have to pay for all of it. Buy a pedal, try it out, and be like, I don't know. It's, interesting. It was an interesting experiment, but I don't love the pedal. Send it back, and you usually get a full refund. Maybe pay a restocking fee, but that's the tax that you pay for the opportunity to try things out that way. So I'm not sure what the options are, but if you get a chance to try boost pedals, try as many as you can. They're amazing. So Cosman is giving us the straight dope on what is happening when we use cascading gain. The technical term for multiple gain stages interacting with each other, influencing each other, pushing each other is called cascading gain. So he says, cascading gain stages not saturating yield cleaner distortion, aka 5150 has an extra 12AX7 versus a JCM 800, right? So in a lot of tube amps, one of the ways that they get the gain up without the tubes just getting flubby, the tone getting super flubby and turning into a mess, is in the amp itself having multiple stages of gain where they all kind of push a little bit rather than one gain stage pushing a lot and getting loose and getting inarticulate, not articulate. So yeah, in adding a boost pedal in front of the amp is like cascading gain. You're adding a gain stage in front. And I, for certain amps and certain tones, will use 2 tube screamers at the front because it will give me a cleaner thing. Now that I have access, excuse me, I'm hitting the mic, to these cleaner, more modern pedals, maybe that's not a necessity, but it is an option. you guys are, how about a cheap distortion or a guitar amp to squeeze harmonic content from the bass? So if you're talking, if you're talking about the bass guitar, I use a guitar side of the bass, like a guitar amp, to get for the high frequency of the bass, and a bass amp for the low frequency of the bass. I split the bass sound for foreigns. For Wetlands, I do not do that. But for foreigns and for Vens, I split it. So if you're talking about using a guitar type amp for the bass tone itself to get the upper frequencies, like the attack and all that stuff, to get it to soften out, but also sound gnarly, like sound more aggressive, the big benefit of it is it smooths out the transients and they're no longer smashing, up to zero and clipping your track. That's the real reason a lot of people do it, but it also sounds really cool. So if that's what you're talking about, using a guitar amp to tame the upper frequency transients of a bass signal, and also get it to sound grindy, that's an excellent thing to do. I do it all the time. A lot of people do it all the time. It's not a new technique. It's not my technique by any stretch. I've been doing it all my life. I felt like that I discovered it at one point, but then I realized as I moved to bigger cities and toured more, I'm like, oh, lots of people do this. But I'm going to get to this last little bit here. This is the very last point. And this one's going to be fun. This one here is my bass player. What does my bass player do to match to my baritone? Or how do I accompany my super low guitar with a bass? This comes up a lot. And some of you already have a solution for this, but there's maybe other things that are very obvious that you're like, oh, I should try that. Maybe not. Let's see though. The first thing I have is a video about this. So if you search the channel, 3 ways to add bass to your baritone. If you're interested in watching the video, I kind of go through the finer points of this and I illustrate it and give examples, but we're going to talk about it here because my technology sucks and I can't give live examples. But the number one way to do it, if you're not tuning lower than say F, I feel like F is really tough, but G for sure. If you're going down to G, you can get really good results with an extended scale bass. And once again, we talked about this guitar already, but this is a Dingwall combustion. And what it has going on for it is it has a 37-inch scale on the low side. It's a fan fret. I don't have it for 5 strings, and I don't have it because it has fan fret. I just have it because the lowest string is 37 inches in scale, and it solves my problem of having a good tone and good tuning stability and all of that kind of stuff for low G. So that is the first thing to do. If you're going beyond G, some people use that for F with good enough result. I know what happens when you try and take it to F, and I personally would never do it, but I'm looking for a certain kind of sound. Other people, the kind of material that they play, it might not be that much of an issue. So that's another thing. The kind of thing that you play, the kind of way that you use it, is going to have an impact on how effective it is. And that's a hard thing to answer. It's like, is this going to be good for my thing? I'm like, I kind of have to be there. I have to be there in person to like try and figure it out. So if that's not working, another option is to do same octave. So the same octave is, I have a project called Wetlands, and Wetlands is in low E1 standard. And I use the Jazzmaster baritone. It's 30 inches in scale. It's in E1 standard. And this here bass is Ibanez ATK 800, I think, premium 800. It is also in standard E. The guitar and the bass are in the same octave. So, and I'm going to jump back here for a second. We'll go, my face might cover this, but these guys, Spectre just released today a new bass, the NS, here, this guy. So there's another option right now. Oh, that's the NS4. There's an NS5. Dimension series, bam. Dimension 5. So this is a 35-inch scale bass, or a 37-inch scale bass, rather, on the low side. So there's another option in this super low tuning kind of thing. I'm not crazy about these, inlays and finishes or whatever, but a lot of people seem to be jazzed about that. So if that's your thing, you're like, oh, super sweet detail. The main thing though is it has a setup that is going to accommodate this super low tuning. I wanted to mention this. It also comes with Fishman pickups stock. It is $2,000 though, US, not cheap. I hope that's in the, we're going to switch back here. I don't know what I'm doing with my setup. I'm so worried that it's going to be broken that I just keep having to check. But yeah, moving back to the second point is tuning to the same octave. So if the Spectre bass is not working or the Dingwall is not working because you're trying to tune so low, then try tuning to the same octave. Something that I do for the same octave is, let's go back to Reaper here. Bam. And I think if I go there, we're good. What's going on there? Oh, 1017. And Wetlands. Okay, so we got Wetlands happening here. This stuff is in the same octave, the guitars and the bass. And if we look at the bass, there's a couple things going on here. I was talking to, not too sure, Matt Sorens, I think, in Nick Hill's stream that I do with him last Wednesday, and we kind of talked about this. But this is in the same octave. I got the bass, just a single bass channel. There's not much going on it, It's a little compressor, a little bit of EQ. And then I also have a sub bass channel, which is, repitch, an octave down, and then an EQ right after it to actually get rid of the ultra low bass. So there's nothing, I cut it off here at 60 Hertz, but with the two instruments in the same octave, I have to give one of them a little bit of a leg up, the bass especially. And I find this process helps to bulk up the bottom end of the bass. As you can see, even though it's an octave down, I chop out like most of the signal. So it's just kind of filling it up down there. It's not like an octave down effect. I wish I was trying to play this, but yeah, everything's broken. I'm sorry. But let's go back to angle 1 and bam. All right, YouTube Studio. So you can do it with same octave. And then you can also use an actual octaver. Some people, when they're recording, they use their guitar to do their guitar parts, and then it's time to do their bass parts, and they just record their guitar through an octaver, or like they record the bass lines with their guitar through an octaver pedal or whatever into a bass amp, or they do it, they just record the bass line in the same octave on their guitar and then pitch it down in the DAW. Because if you try to play with pitch effects in the DAW, a lot of times there's way too much latency. Sometimes it works, depends on the plugin you're using, but a lot of times there's just so much latency as soon as you use a real-time pitch effect in the DAW. Depends on the system you're in. But if you're having that problem, just record the bass line in the same octave on your guitar or even on the bass, and then pitch it down if you want to do this octave down kind of thing. And then the last two is virtual bass. I have no real experience with it. I'm not opposed to it. I just have never needed it. I've played around with it a little bit, but usually I don't have a whole lot of time. But I know a lot of people who've used virtual basses, the Loki bass, and there's a whole bunch of them. I can't remember, but I'm sure those of you who are using virtual basses to go super low in the chat, please list them if anybody is interested in doing them. I was going to have a list up here, but I got so taken away with my tech issues that I didn't get to it. So I apologize there. And the last thing is synth. This is something that I see a lot in, like I really like math rock, especially like UK style math rock. It's quite a bit different than typical American math rock, but they use a lot of synths for bass lines and whatnot. My friend Matt Fong, he has a project here in Toronto called Future Machines. I was going to call it Blaster Birds, but that's his bird watching channel. Yeah, he's a bird watcher as well, but he's a cool guy. But he has this math rock band called Future Machines, and the bass is all synth bass. They're not a super tuned down band, but they're good proof that with a good player, synth player, you can do some cool stuff. In some ways, it can be even cooler. And then there's like Three Trap Tigers, Evil X, like some UK math rock bands that use synths as basses. Beautiful thing about a synth is you have access to all the notes. You know, however low you want to go, you're good to go. So it's a different sound, but you can take a synth, put it through whatever pedals you want, put it through whatever kind of amp you want. That's not off the table. It's going to sound different than a string bass, but that has a little bit to do with the player as well. Like I say, if you have a good synth player, it might be even better than having a bass player. So there are many ways to work with the bass in terms of the problems of bass. And there are many ways to accommodate the bass, having enough bass, doing the guitar, you know, having accompaniment, the octave down or the same octave. I highly suggest just being creative and trying things. And, you know, trying to answer any problem that you arrive at. You're like, oh, it's not working. Be like, well, what if I try this? Like just be creative, come up with cool stuff. But that's it for this topic. I hope that it was interesting and helpful. It looks like it got the party started. It really opened up the pit. You guys are like moshing so hard in the chats. It's like, yeah. Just make a big bow wow sounds with your mic up. Yeah, totally. Turbo Plasma Chicken knows how to do it. It's like, Turbo Plasma, you know I like that bow wow wow tone, eh? It's like that is my tone. Bow wow 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 bow bow. But I'm going to shut her down here in about 5 minutes. But I'm going to, I want to chat a little bit. Datamouth, how are you? I hope all is well. Alexis, you know Datamouth. That's very cool. You guys all know each other. That's sick. 27. You guys are having little chats amongst each other. If anyone is using Logic Pro X, there is a lot you can do to process their stock-based virtual instruments. MJ Macabre is throwing down a little bit of knowledge there. Yeah, Logic Pro X has an incredible suite of instruments and tools that are just stock right in the platform. It's the thing that it really has. It's a really great platform. And the big selling feature is that it has incredible instruments that you can just use right away and they sound good. Gin bass. Thank you, Connor. That is a big one. Euro bass. That is a big one. Connor has the list. So if you're in the chat and you're like, what are the virtual basses? What are the VST basses? Connor has them listed and I'll read them off here. Loki bass, Euro bass, Gin bass are the very popular ones that I hear about a lot. Like almost every day I hear about somebody using them and they sound really good. I've heard them used in amazing ways. Also David from Apoplexia, he has a lot of experience with synths. So if you're like, I want to explore this synth thing as an alternative to a bass guitar, he knows synths. So if you want to talk to a guy about synths, this is the guy. Apoplexia, his name is David. I hope that's okay to use your name, Dave, or Apoplexia. I never know where the line is. And Riff Biscuit, Periphery uses synths to fill out the guitar tracks usually. Yeah. And the synths don't need to be used only for low end. You can use them as pads and all that stuff, obviously. I think that is the traditional kind of go-to. But yeah, try stuff. See what you like to do. Get stoked. This is cool, Bunn. Thank you. Cosman, thank you. Thank you for the sick cables. They're not here yet, but they're on their way and you're in the stream and this is all cool. By the way, Cosman made me some cables. He has Marauder Music on Reverb. I'm not sure how active the page is currently. He's still working on it, but he makes electronic things and he made me some coily cables, custom coily cables. So if you're like, I want some high quality cables, he'll make them for you to your spec, as best to your spec as possible. And he's really kind of like a fair guy. He takes you through the process, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys are down with cables, Cosman in the chat is the cable guy. And the prices are great. They're fair prices. Like he does good work and it's not like they're cheap or anything. They're fairly priced. They're just not insanely priced. Everything is good. Can I talk about the Helix as opposed to, say, other devices or software? Jason Oshowski. Helix, yes. So Helix is, for those of you who don't know much about the Helix, the Helix and the Axe-Fx actually share a lot in terms of the concept. The big, if you have experience with the Axe-Fx, it's a block-based modeler. So there are blocks in a chain, and there are a lot of options to have multiple chains. And Datamouth, I'm going to get your, I don't want to lose your comment here. There are blocks in the chain, and the blocks represent effects pedals, amps, cabinets, all these sorts of things. And in bigger units, in my unit, I only have one chain with a effects return, like an effects chain that I can put in it as well. In the bigger units, there are two chains with two effects chains. And I think you can get up to 4 total paths. Nick Hill is the Helix guy. He can verify that. I've had a Helix, but I always used it in a simple way. Like I had a rack Helix, the granddaddy of all of them. And I never used any more than one path, but I think you can use up to 4 paths in it. But it is a very powerful box. Other devices that are similar to the Helix would be the Quad Cortex by Neural DSP and, like I say, the Axe-Fx. And they are all sort of this block-based signal chain with very high quality sounding blocks, parameters, effects, amps, all that kind of stuff. There are arguments on the internet as to which one is better or whatever, but I think really what it comes down to is like how you intend to use it, like physically how you want to use it, and also sonically how you want to use it. And usually there's going to be one that is going to come out ahead of the others. There's also the Kemper Profiler, but it's not as much of a block-based thing, but it is sort of in that gang. But yeah. And then there's the bias effects stuff. They do the amps, but they don't really do the effects processing. So like with all of the blocks, it's more of just an amp with basic features. So the Helix, the Axe Effects, and the Quad Cortex are all very similar concepts. They have things that very significantly differentiate them, but just in basic conversation, there are all these block-based processors that are quite powerful that sound really good. Which one you decide to go with has more to do with your workflow and use case scenario than it does which is better. So I hope that helps, Jason. If, like I say, if you really want to get into the Helix, Nick Hill is the Helix guy. And he's in the old chat here. I highly recommend striking up a conversation with him. He's an awesome guy and he loves to help. And Nick Hill, if you're still in the chat, Jason is a Toronto guy. He lives in the United States now. He's in Michigan, but yeah, he's a Toronto homie. Datamouth. Okay, I play Tallyberry and a Kiesel 8-string in my band. I run a Rockerverb 4x12 and a 2x12. I'm thinking to get an Emperor 1x12 and 115. Any thoughts on 15-inch speakers on low music? So the interesting thing about 15-inch speakers is they typically do have a pretty good low frequency response, but they tend to also be quite good in the upper harmonic series, depending on what speaker you go with. And that I can't answer very well. I just know that I've played a few 15s. A lot of times you play a 15-inch speaker and it feels slow. The response of it feels slow and sluggish or really dipped in the mids. But every now and then you'll play one, you're like, this is the liveliest, richest speaker I've ever played. I haven't played a ton of them, so I don't have this like swath of experience with them, Datamouth. But a 15 can be very cool. In terms of reproducing more bottom end, if that's your goal, as I was saying earlier, I think splitting the signal and sending more of a bass oriented signal to a more bass oriented amplifier and cabinet and retaining your guitar tone so that it is focused and, you know, the mids are rich and all that kind of stuff. I think that is kind of the way to go with the, you know, mixing a whole bunch of speaker configurations. Ultimately, I say try everything. Like if it's easy to try things, try them. If it costs a lot of money, try renting certain types of configurations, different kinds of cabinets and whatnot, and just putting them together. Be mindful of resistance and how the ohms and all that kind of stuff add up and interact with your system. But yeah, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I hope it is. But Datamouth, thank you for the sticker. I hope that helps. 15s can be amazing for all guitar stuff, but they can also be problematic. You got to find the thing that's voiced more for the thing that you want out of it. I wish it was more straightforward. Getting to the end here. Yes, it does. Nick Hill, Cosman, Nick. No. You guys are the best. You guys are having all these conversations with each other. So I'm going to shut this stream down because I'm going to try and sort this stuff out. I got a lot of problems that are happening here. It's fine. You know, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I want to get it sorted before I move forward here. But I'm going to shut it down for the night. Amazing activity in the chat. It looks like you guys are getting to know each other. That is number one on this here live stream. You know, the community part of it, becoming friends, helping each other out, forming collaborations, all of that kind of stuff. So very awesome to see. But I'm going to shut her down for the night. I hope you guys are well. And This Wednesday, I'm going to be streaming with Nick Hill, our bandless podcast, video podcast thing. It's going to be streaming on this channel and his channel simultaneously. So it's an experiment. It might break. I hope it doesn't. Hopefully we'll have all the audio and all that sorted out by then. But we're going to be streaming there. And I do have videos that I'm producing. They're just taking a while. And I'm trying to kind of use the live streams as a means to not be like disappear for a month because I'm working on these epic videos. So it's the videos are still happening, maybe even more epic than ever, more cinematic than ever. Maybe not, but hopefully they're way better than they ever were. And that's happening. But yeah, the live streams are fun, an opportunity to hang out with you guys and build something bigger than myself, build something bigger than ourselves. So yeah, Wednesday, hope to see you. I hope you have a good weekend. Be safe. Play guitar, experiment, explore, learn, and create. And life gets so much richer when you do all those things. But love you guys. I hope all is well. I'm piecing at the screen, piecing at the camera. Have an amazing night, an amazing weekend.